Hello, friends. Using again new software, you can see straight away the topic today, guys, is at the moment, and importance of symbolism, national colors, things like that. Now, this might seem to the uninitiated like a trite subject, reasonably short presentation. The importance of symbols, and in particular, understanding the nature and the character and the form uh, of human evil. Because until we do that, guys, we're going to keep having these cycles of war and violence and oppression and tyranny time after time after time. On the video today, emergency. Is this actually the story of Cain and Abel repeating itself all over again? And I don't mean in just the most obvious format, the one brother choosing to kill another, because of course the semitic peoples, as it's known, includes both. And the first thing that we should all be aware of is that traditionally it is understood that the Arabs, the Arab nations, descended from Ishmael. Now, Ishmael, son of Abraham, all right? His brother was Isaac. We'll come to Isaac in a moment, but just please bear with me, all right? So Ishmael was, he was the product of a union between Abraham and a woman called Hagar. All the flags on the background behind me here, guys. But the point I want you to note is that at the top there with the United combinations of red, white, and blue, okay? The other nations of the Arab League, the Hamas, of the color blue. Now, why is this important? You say it's only colors. What does it matter? Well, I'm doing my best to educate known as the tree. It's a code of the electromagnetic spectrum, and it appears to underwrite everything that we know about the universe and in particular. Now, this is right across the board. I'm talking about science, I'm talking about religion, I'm talking about politics, I'm talking about the natural world, I'm talking about atoms and all the rest of it, but we can't go into too much detail on that today. But one of the outcomes of this triadic architecture correspond likewise to, and so on and so forth. But this in turn corresponds, to go back to the mythical story of the Garden of Eden, to God as the deity, the spirit character, Eve as the feminine, represented by the ends of the spectrum, blue and red. That's the limits of what we can see, guys, okay? So to get into the story here, let's start with recognizing the fact that Ishmael, who is described as a wild ox of a man, whose hand will be against everyone. So we're talking about a man who is described by God, as being having characteristics that are very similar to Cain, violent, aggressive, angry, start first of all. We'll go Ishmael, but understand this: Ishmael is considered to be the father of the Arabs. He had 12 sons who became the 12 Arabic tribes. And it says strong association. On the other side, his brother Isaac was the father of Jacob. All right, we'll come to him in a minute. Now, Jacob, later his name got transferred to mean Israel. All right, from Jacob's 12, guys, I want you to pay attention, okay? So let's go back, first of all, to the story of Cain and Abel principle. Now, you will not, unless you've been listening, theory, argue it is more than a theory, because it is a self-evident archetypal set of principles. Okay, do you remember we started with spirit, mind, body? Something goes wrong in the Garden of Eden. Everything we're unashamed with God, and if we just picture and imagine that scenario, then we know something went wrong. Well, the detail of that, although that is profound as well, but just I want to keep this centered to the conflict and in the state of Israel is not a mere political, cultural clash. Okay, there's a lot more to it, and it's all rooted in the dynamic of Garden of Eden, because Eve allows herself to be tempted to come into the fold, and she's done the lies instead of based on spirit, mind, the mind to direct the body. In this case, she and all right. So now you have, so the next thing you know is that because of this action, she conceives and bears a son called Cain. Then she has another son called Abel. And Cain and Abel want to talk to God because their parents have told them all about him. So they decide they can't talk directly to God anymore because they're not in the Garden of Eden anymore. They're making symbolic offerings. So they take to, he says to them both, he says, well done, lads. I appreciate it. Thank you for bringing your offerings. Abel, I can accept yours. I'm sorry, Cain, I can't. Very, very poignant, guys. Because in the original order of things, you know, femininity, masculinity, in that order, this corresponds with the light spectrum. And when they brought their offerings, you see, what God then says to Cain is, he says, but don't get angry, Cain. You know, why is you will be over? So just a little bit more here, see if this is big enough. Yes, there we are. Now I'll make it a little larger than that, guys. So that, yeah, I'm on the side there. All right. So here we have Cain. Cain is the older son. He's in the masculine position. Okay. He's the older son. He's a farmer. He's strong. He's burly. Is in the position of the feminine in this case because he's junior and he's not so strong and all that sort of stuff. Okay. Now, because Cain was in the wrong position, God could not accept his offering. This is crucially important. I'm throwing a lot at you, and it's, you know, this religious topic. Most people know me from my work in the league, but actually it all leads back to this, guys. And my origins were in, my scholastic, which informed me and how I went about dealing with a corrupt justice system in Ireland and so on. But so just Cain and Abel, Cain's very angry, and we know that instead of, quote, doing the right thing, he goes off and he murders his brother. Now, why is this such an important thing? Well, it's because of what we know as human history, or, to play on words, his story. But who's the his that we're talking about? We're talking about Cain. Our history is his story. It's the story of the violent, aggressive, dominating everything by force and violence. Okay, and there are different types of force and violence at play in the world today as well, guys. But what's going on over in the Middle East is just quite a typical example. Cain murders Abel, and then Cain gets cursed, and so on and so forth, and he is banished and told to walk the earth as a nomad, for the rest of his life, and the ground will not yield up its fruits to him, and all this sort of stuff. So he to be a wandering nomad type. This is where this here on the left, the symbolism here is Satan informing Cain to kill his brother Abel. Should have listened to what God said, the same as Adam and Eve didn't, the same symbolism for the Garden of Eden story. And this is the beginning of what we call human history. Now, one second, guys. Just let's see. So the next thing I want you to have a quick look at. Now, this is super, super important, guys. Now, please take a minute and go these quotes and references in the Bible for yourself. But I'm going to focus mainly on the stories that match the Cain and Abel dynamic. Why? Because I'm arguing that the whole of human history has been an attempt by the divine, by the original creator, the Almighty, whatever you want to call it, the universal energy, call it what you like, to get humanity to align back principle, if you like, the original triadic archetype, whatever you want to call it. But this notion of spirit, mind, body, deity, feminine, masculine, a concept, and I've got literally scores of examples of this triadic model. And like I said, it's evident in the spectrum of light itself, in atoms and molecules in question. It clarifies that, for example, immediately, and so on and so forth. But more interestingly, though, than anything else, is how the colors of the spectrum, the deep reds at one end, which represent the masculine, the deep blues at the other end that represent the feminine, and then the reds and the blacks, which traditionally represent, and I think, you think in the Second World War, for example, the Nazi regime and things like that, for our flags, for our nations and all this, that align with these fundamental. It's a warning sign to watch out, that there could be black, of course, is the complete opposite of light. It's an absence of light and color, and it represents the black and the red when they represent the satanic element. And again, there's more to it than this. I'm not saying that, let's say Manchester United, who plays in red and black or something, are all wicked people. It's happening, and it all aligns with the properties of light, the elements of the electromagnetic spectrum, the essence of nature and life itself. Okay, so here we have. Let's go straight to about 4 lines down here, guys. Said is the father of the Arabs. All right, he's known as an ox of a man, or a donkey of a man, actually, and his hand will be up against everyone, and he'll be out. His descendants became the Arab tribes, and they were all, and this is quote straight out of the Bible. I haven't got time to bring them all up for you today. Straight out of the Bible, they all lived in open hostility against each other. It says again the time, right? So this is the sort of the characteristics of Cain seem to align up with this side of the lineage. You know, that part of the geography there. Okay. Now, so what's interesting? His mother was an Egyptian, as we know, and Isaac ends up. What's the right word? He ends up taking over the providence. It's passed to Isaac. It isn't passed to the older brother, Ishmael. He goes off to Egypt and starts 12 new tribes. Okay, but it's left to Isaac then, who then, okay, in another interesting story. Now, Isaac in turn then has two sons. Now, think about the Cain and Abel principle, right? Esau and Jacob, right? Jacob is the one who eventually gets called Israel, okay? Esau is described, comes out, he's actually holding on to his heel. Isn't it interesting? Remember I told you the numbers 40 and 70 and their multiples because they number 440 for 400 nanometers 40 years old when they go and get married. Esau marries a couple of Egyptian women, and then Jacob goes off and gets married to, and I forgot there. No, wife. Anyway, I'm sorry, I can't see the screen very well here, despite the chunky glasses here. So the point I'm trying to make is actually through trickery and deception. Isaac is deceived. Isaac is going blind, and their son Jacob actually conspire together. Not Jacob, I'm sorry. Yes, Esau and Jacob, of course, that becomes Israel. Sorry, guys, the print is so small here, I can barely read it. They conspire to trick Isaac into giving his blessing to Jacob instead of the older brother Esau. So it's like the Cain and Abel positions are being reversed again, but they didn't even know it himself, because he has to be deceived. They cover Jacob in cloths to make him hairy, so that. But prior to that, before he's come in to get the brother Esau has come back from the field. He's hungry, and he wants some food. And Jacob is eating food. And funny enough, it's red. Why does it have to be red? These are questions that have to be answered. I'm saying because it aligns with the properties of light itself, the two different ends of the spectrum. So he sells his birthright. Esau actually sells his birthright, or gives it away basically, for a bowl of stew, of red stew, gives it to his brother. And his brother then, without telling the father that his older brother has sold him the birthright, he puts on the hairy blankets, and him and his mother between them, Isaac, into giving him the blessing. And it's such a shock to Esau, and he gets very angry about it, and he plots to kill Jacob, who later becomes Israel, then has to run off to Egypt again, right? Now, I hope I've, of course, where as a prince, then 40 years in the desert, then another 40 years bringing Aaron, serves him in the right order. Older brother serves the younger brother who's connected to the divine. Moses up the mountain and all the rest of it. Guys, I'll do more presentations about this in due course, but I want to keep this moving now and let you see why this is important, because there's a direct connection, guys, between the Ishmaelites, if you like, the Arab nations, and the colors that they just look at them there in a row at the bottom. You see them at the bottom row. That's the PLO, the Arab League, the Soviet Union that supported them during Egypt and maybe Syria or something down there. None of them have blue in their flags. Why not? Because Abel as a feminine entity, my daughter Zion with Israel in a sort of a marriage union where Israel is the bride. Very interesting, guys. Why doesn't Israel have any red in its flag? Because they never recognize had they difficult realities on the ground. So to move now, I want to try and keep this as simple as I can. So yes, it's a relatively short one here tonight, guys. I'm just drawing attention to this political historical alignment. So the color patterns, and they align with some universal principle. But how do we solve this problem? I mean, how is it going to be solved? Well, I think in the same way that arguably the reason that Cain killed Abel was because he was insanely jealous of and angered that his offering wasn't accepted, but that Abel was more favored. Yeah. And then we see that in the Bible, like I say, just exemplified in this simple chart by about, 10 or so examples of older brothers serving younger brothers, or being told, just put it in, serve your brother, Bible quotes, and see how many times it comes up. There are other central figures, some of the most important central figures in the Bible, where this exact same pattern happens to them, but even the people who wrote the Bible didn't understand this symbolism. They couldn't have done, because it wasn't until at least the 1960s that there was enough information, scientific information on the table for us to be able to understand. Let's see now if there's if I it was purely about the Middle East that's causing all of this wickedness and destruction and evil that's in the world. Out of all of the elements of the universe and creation that we're aware of, it's only humans that are actively capable. When we do that, it's what I would call, that's the official sort of clinical term for evil. It's a violation of universal law, because we've been given this semi-divine power to think that's not going to come as a surprise to anybody else. This is not a consequence of good actions, guys. All right, here we have again, arguably, and again, I know what a hotbed of emotions this is at the moment. I'm not either sort of taking sides and point to perennial conflicts where it is often the biggest, strongest, most robust, the person with the most military might, the most power, the most money, they keep on acting as Cain acted. They keep on, okay? And again, we know the political situation situated well enough to know that there's nobody with clean hands out there in the Middle East conflicts at all. But it's in starting to understand that the source and the origin of the masculine energies which involve and include and suppression of the feminine. What our connection, our personal individual connections with the divine. We informed ourselves through our feminine aspects, the maternal aspects that we consciences, which would then direct the physical elements of the body how to murdering people, especially women, and there can be no argument anywhere that that is good, justified. On the other hand, as well, when empire or country or whatever finds themselves in the more powerful position, it is equal misuse and abuse that power and authority to do further harm to other people and increase the Arabs and the Israelis, if you like, are in the historical position of Cain and Abel. But it's equally important that Abel doesn't, irritate, annoy, who is acting out of frustration and anger and jealousy and whatever else might be the case. I hope I haven't offended too many people with this video tonight, guys. I'm not saying that it's a sin out there, but with everything else that is going on in the world at the moment, I think it's crucially important that are way above and beyond what most of us understand is really going on. And if I pull up this slide, this is a selection of just a handful of quotes. Yeah, there we are. These are 4 quotes from scripture. I'll read them out. Satan, who is the god of this world, has blinded the minds of those who don't believe. But against evil spiritualities and against mighty powers in this dark world, we know Satan will be cast out. Usually at this surrounding and all the rest of it, a true human being who's compared the masculine in that order. Could it be possible that if you can somehow remove the soul or man, that what you're left with is a beast? Yeah. And what in a third percent, so it's a third to each of those elements: spirit, mind, and body. Remove the soul, what are you left with? 66.6. There's your beast. People, organizations, entities, institutions that do not find. That's where all of the evil in the world comes from. That's the concept that will lead to the plan, that will lead to the action, that will hopefully put an end to all of this horror. Thanks for your time, guys.